Hey, Falcons and NFL fans. Welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollen. I'm Dave Holcomb. It's the last show before the NFL draft, Tom. So we got, plenty of meat on the bone to discuss this week. We're going to talk Falcons' final preparations in the draft. They also did a couple moves this week, most recently releasing cornerback Casey Hayward last night. So we'll talk about that news and if that will have any impact on the Falcons draft next weekend. And I think we're going to hit upon some news around the league. Maybe not news necessarily, but kind of project how the beginning of the draft could go next Thursday night. And and of course that's related to the Falcons pick at number 8 because who goes in the first 7 picks will determine obviously who will be available for them and who they ultimately will take with their first overall pick this year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because there's a lot of questions as to what's going to go on in front of them, and it's going to make a big difference. And I've seen some mocks that really had me questioning what that writer was thinking when he made the Falcons pick. But other than that, yeah, it's going to be interesting. This is it. I mean, we're next Thursday. We're there. Next Saturday, we'll be talking about rounds 1 and 2.
Yeah, and 3.
Days 1 and 2. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and round 4 will be beginning right as our show starts.
Will.
So, it is here, and I think, at least the way I feel, thank God it's here, because it just seems like every year the mock drafts start earlier and earlier, and that's fun and all, but by the time we get to the draft, it's like, man, it's finally, I almost can't believe it's here, but thank goodness it is, because I just can't look at another mock draft.
Yeah, I know. That's the way I feel about it too. It's hilarious that we feel that way, but yeah, and the hell of it is you're going to start seeing the first mock drafts for 2024.
Right, that's true.
About an hour after this draft is over.
Yeah.
So, you can't get away from them, but yeah, at least we can ignore them for a while.
Right. Especially, I won't even get into the reasons why you don't want to look at a mock draft for 2024 hours after the 2023 draft. But most obvious one is we don't know who's picking where. So who knew that, the Bears would be picking first, right? This year,
exactly.
Obviously they're traded back and now have number 9, but I don't think last year that was on our radar that the Bears were going to be, have the worst record.
Nope. So. Definitely not. I think everybody kind of thought Houston. Nobody's surprised about Houston.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Bears kind of shocked coming up in that spot. I mean, once you knew Kyler, well, I think Arizona didn't surprise anybody. Indianapolis Colts.
Well, You're not surprised that the Cardinals are picking in the top 5?
No.
Yeah, I mean, they were a playoff team in 2021.
I don't care. I thought their coach was actually going to get fired, and I called it. Before the season, I thought their coach was on the hot seat.
I agree with you with that, but I thought they'd go 7-10, not 3-14 or whatever they did go. But that was a disastrous season for the Cardinals and Colts too. It was that was surprising for sure.
Yeah.
I thought they would be a contender, and they're picking in the top 5 as well. And a couple of teams, I guess there were a lot of surprising bad teams because I don't think anyone thought the Broncos would be as bad as they were, and same with the defending champion Rams. Of course, they don't have their first round picks; they belong to the Seahawks and Lions, respectively. But a lot of surprises in the top 10 of teams having those picks, and probably will be the case again next year, which is why it's impossible really to make a mock draft for next year already. But
I get upset about people making mock drafts before the free agency period because, free agency affects what you're going to do in the draft. And it surprises me every year that you see all these mock drafts come out before free agency starts. You got to wait on that.
it's about the page views, and that's why you're posting your mock draft Sunday night next weekend, or Saturday night even, because you get the SEO advantages of being first. And
right, exactly.
And, it doesn't really matter how accurate you are. Everybody's wrong in their mock drafts, so there's no accuracy when it comes to mock drafts.
Even the experts are wrong in their mock drafts.
Right. Right. Yeah. So let's get to some hard news to start off today's show, which is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. When you do, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. That's free money for you and a great way to support our show. Other ways you can support us: follow us on YouTube, give us a like on Facebook, and follow Tom and I on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. If you're listening on replay, we'd love to hear comments, feedback from this show or just our show in general. And if you're listening live, be a part of the show, because we will get your comments over the next hour.
Yep, exactly. Be a part of the show. We already got a couple of comments coming in. Tony and Brian saying hello with us for the hour, and it's always great to see them.
Brian calling you an expert, Tom.
Oh, I'm not an expert. I make it up as I go along, Brian. And don't butter up to me just because I'm starting to come around with the fact that the Falcons might be taking Bijan Robinson. Because I know Brian's been talking about it for a while. But hit Prize Picks. You got the NBA playoffs. You got the NHL playoffs coming up. So plenty of opportunities on Prize Picks. Even got cricket. I mean, RC Bangalore is facing the Rajasthan Royals. And Joe Butler, they project for 28.5 runs. You can go above or below. Some of these run totals you might want to jump on. So definitely sign up for Prize Picks. Get in on the action.
Somebody will jump on it. Not me, but somebody I'm sure will.
Yeah.
On the cricket over and under.
Oh, man. Well, my question, as always, is when is the game being played? I mean, that's over the international date line. So is that game actually yesterday, or is that game or tomorrow? So, it's always hard to tell.
Depends on what time it is where you are.
Yeah, right.
But all right, that's enough cricket talk. The Falcons yesterday evening released cornerback Casey Hayward. It saves them $5 million against the salary cap, Tom. And the Falcons already had a decent amount of salary cap space, so they've spent a lot of money this offseason.
Yeah.
Still, we're in pretty good shape with the cap. So I wouldn't say he's a cap casualty. This was a decision that, they're saving some money, but they're ultimately deciding that Hayward, that they can spend that money better elsewhere, and they can find a better cornerback than Hayward was, and only played 6 games last year before suffering the season-ending shoulder injury. But did you have any reaction to the release of Hayward yesterday?
Not surprised. Actually expected it, especially when the Falcons traded for Jeff Okudah, and some of the signings that they've made in the secondary this year. So I actually expected to see, I didn't come out and predict it, but I am not surprised to see Hayward get cut. So I did not think he was going to make the opening day roster as it was.
Yeah, and wasn't a huge, again, didn't make a huge impact for the team last year because of the season-ending injury. And I guess the other question that I would have with this move is, does it impact the Falcons, or how? I think it does impact it a little. How does it impact their draft strategy next week? And I think if I was answering my own question, the cornerback class from what I've read is pretty deep. So the Falcons don't have to target a cornerback at number 8. They can. There's guys that I think are good enough to be picked in that spot. but they don't have to say, oh, well, we just lost Hayward. We have to draft a cornerback in the first round. That's a possibility, but they could. I think that they're looking at losing Hayward and saying we will get a cornerback on the first 2 days, and they can get a quality cornerback in the first 3 rounds because it is supposed to be anyway, a pretty deep cornerback class.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we got one of the comments saying he failed his physical. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know why, but still, I did not expect him to be on the team this year. I really did expect him to get cut. So I really didn't look into the reasons behind it because it wasn't something that surprised me. And yeah, this is a deep cornerback class. You can go Christian Gonzalez in the first round, or you could go deeper and still get a quality quarterback to go along with
AJ Terrell.
Yeah. So David Terrell. Yeah. AJ Terrell. So, I think the opportunities there, even in the second and third rounds, the Falcons want to go for it. So it's, there's possibilities. That's why I don't think they're going to go Christian Gonzalez in the first round or David Witherspoon. They'll wait and then move forward with it from there. But yeah, D. Alford actually played fairly well last year. So I think D. Alford's going to get more snaps because of this too. And I think he played well enough to earn them. So, and Brian, yeah, you're right. You can get a corner at 44. I think it's just as easy. So I think you get a quality corner at 44. So I'm not upset by the Hayward release. I expected it.
The ESPN draft rankings big board has 15 cornerbacks ranked in the top 101 players, which I think speaks to the volume of cornerbacks we're going to see go off the board on the first 2 days. I mean, that's quite a few cornerbacks in the top 100. So
Right.
I'd have to do a little bit more research to see if there were any other positions that are as deep or have as many players in the top 100, or if, the cornerback, if a different website maybe sees the cornerback class a little bit differently. But the ESPN big board is expecting the cornerbacks to be very popular picks on day 2, second and third round.
At some point, you're going to see a run on cornerbacks. Just like last year, it was deep in wide receivers. This year, not so deep. You had to get your wide receiver last year if you were going to get one. And you're not really going to get, I think there are about 2 in the top, expected to maybe go in the top in the first round. But yeah, cornerback, once one cornerback goes down, more will go. So it just depends on when that first cornerback goes down as far as when Falcons start to take a look at that position. Could be in the second round, could be in the third round. So let's keep an eye on that. It's going to be interesting to watch. As I always say, the draft is a strange animal. It really is. You just never know how it's going to start falling. Teams start panicking a little. They see a run on a certain position. They're like, well, I got to get my guy or else I'm not going to get him. It's a very fluid process.
Yeah.
So, and that's the interesting part of the draft. And that's the interesting part of watching the draft. It's a very fluid process.
Brian says it is strange but fun. I think he's referring to the draft there, but Brian's sending a lot of comments in. But I think that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, probably.
Tony had a comment about the Hayward trade. He said, I don't think it impacts the team draft strategy at all. Yeah, I would lean towards that too, Tony. I just think, this is the thing. I think it maybe puts a little bit more priority in getting a cornerback in the first 3 rounds, but I think that priority was probably already there. So yeah.
So do I.
Minimal. The impact probably is very minimal. And
right.
Gary had a very interesting question, not necessarily draft related, but he was commenting about responding to a comment from Tony earlier about the Rams. We were talking about the Rams being a bad team now. And Gary asks, would the Falcons pursue Aaron Donald if he becomes available? That's an interesting question. I think it's very unlikely. I think it's unlikely he would become available. And I think Tony already responded to Gary and saying he would cost too much. He's not going to play much longer. Those are all valid points, Tony. But,
yes.
You saw what the Steelers got for Allen Robinson this week from the Rams. And maybe it is apples and oranges in terms of what Allen Robinson has done the last couple of years versus Aaron Donald. I get that.
Yeah.
But the Steelers got Allen Robinson for nothing. They flipped 7th round picks, and it wasn't even like a salary dump for the Rams because they're eating some of Allen Robinson's salary.
Right, exactly.
So could the Rams, if they're in full rebuild mode and Aaron Donald doesn't want to be there and he's making a stink and says, I want to get out of here, could he have the leverage that the Rams have to eat some of his salary, or they don't get much in a draft trade back? Possible. It's possible.
I say anything is possible right now. I don't think the Falcons have the capital to be able to go after him. I don't think they have the draft capital. I don't think they have the player capital that the Rams are going to be looking for. And the Rams, they're looking to rebuild. They went all in on that Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
They gave away the store to try and get that Super Bowl win. And now they're paying for it.
Yeah.
In the early 1970s, when George Allen took over the Redskins, this is a guy who never met a draft pick he couldn't trade because he wanted the guaranteed player instead of the prospect. That's not a strategy that's going to work long-term for you in this NFL, especially with free agency. Teams can rebuild faster. Teams can catch up to you faster. You have to be able to rebuild. Your only real good chance of rebuilding is through the draft, getting some solid young players.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's developed. So it's a different league. The Rams went back to the old model, the old George Allen model of, what are we going to do with all these draft picks? Let's get some real players and make that run for the Super Bowl. Well, you did it. You won your Super Bowl. And you're going to pay for it for a couple of years now as you rebuild that roster and that draft capital.
I wouldn't say the Rams are done altogether, though, because my thing with the Rams was they were so star-driven for a couple years, and they were star-driven when they won their Super Bowl. Last year, all their stars got hurt. Now, their stars are older, so there's a chance that they're just not going to be superstars anymore. But could they come back and be a lot better than a bottom 5 team? I think that's possible. So I don't even know if Aaron Donald will want to leave. So it's very unlikely. Very unlikely.
In his career, I don't think so. I don't think he's looking to leave. I think there was already retirement talk with Aaron Donald after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's a very possible thing that Donald is already winding down in his career and is willing to be there to help the Rams rebuild for their next run. So I'm not saying that it's an unlikely. I never count anything out, but it's unlikely.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's going to become available for there even to be a conversation about whether the Falcons should go after him or not. Brian brings up a interesting point about McVeigh. There was a lot of discussion about McVeigh retiring after the Super Bowl, more than a year ago. And then he followed up the Super Bowl with one of the worst campaigns for a Super Bowl defending champion. So it was that there were a lot of injuries, but was that also a result of McVeigh not really wanting to be there? I don't know. I think if he didn't want to be there, he wouldn't be coming back.
He wouldn't be there.
He would have already left.
He can name his price as far as going into the television booth. So, McVeigh is there because he wants to be there. From what I've seen, he really wants to do this rebuild. So he's committed to the Rams for the immediate future. He's not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere either for the next 40 minutes, Tom. Keep sending us your comments in about the NFL draft. The other piece of Falcons news from this week, Olamide Zaccheaus, wide receiver, who was really the number 2 wide receiver on the team last year, had been a depth receiver for a few years in Atlanta, signed with the Philadelphia Eagles. Another minor transaction. I don't necessarily know if, this might have even been less significant than losing Hayward, because I think maybe Falcons fans have already come to terms with the fact that Zaccheaus wasn't going to be back. But did you have any reaction to Zaccheaus, officially joining a different team?
I'm disappointed that the Falcons didn't bring him back. I thought he could have been, I thought he added depth to the Falcons receiver core. And I'm surprised that the Falcons didn't make a move to bring him back. But I agree with you. I think as time has gone by, Falcons fans have gotten used to the fact that Zaccheaus just wasn't going to be here, that the Falcons weren't interested in him being here. So I'm not surprised seeing him, excuse me. I'm not surprised to see him take the opportunity to sign with another team now, because it's obvious that the Falcons didn't want him. I still think he was valuable depth, but
yeah.
That was, not surprising, but disappointing.
Yeah, I always kind of liked him. Thought he had a fun name that kind of, led me to like him a little bit. And then he made some nice plays for the Falcons over 3 or 4 years. Never was a, big star or anything, but Falcons kind of been hurting for receivers the last couple seasons. So to see him leave was a little bit of a disappointment, but that's probably a position that they also are going to target, in the middle rounds of the upcoming draft.
Yeah, I'll never forget before he was drafted, and Lance Zierling of NFL.com, and his take on Zaccheaus was he had the ugliest catching style that he's ever seen of a receiver coming out of college. And I'll just never forget that, because you never see something like that from a writer where they'll really kind of pound on the player a little bit as he's coming out, and denigrate his abilities. But he did turn into a fairly good wide receiver for the Falcons. He was a quality player for him and added some depth to that receiver room. I don't think they used him to throw as deep as they should have at times. Yeah. I thought that was his real talent, was getting deep. But I don't think he was well used here in Atlanta, but I think he was a quality guy in Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the, probably the biggest play of his career, one of the, his coming out game in the NFL was that, I think it was in 2019. Yeah, it was 2019 where he had the, I don't know, it was a 92-yard, 95-yard touchdown catch from Matt Ryan. And that's, I believe it's the longest pass in Matt Ryan's career. And it was to this kid that had 2 other passes thrown to him and before that long touchdown. So I was covering that game for Falcon Maven. So that is a memory I'll always remember of Zaccheaus.
Yeah. It's, as I say, he was a great deep threat. He wasn't used as the deep threat that I think he could have been to stretch defenses, but yeah, made some quality catches, made some exciting catches for the Falcons. So
Tony suggests replacing Zaccheaus with a Jets receiver, Corey Davis or Denzel Mims. And that's an interesting suggestion, Tony, in transitions to another topic that I wanted to briefly discuss today. The ESPN's Bill Barnwell had a interesting article, Tom, where he kind of just proposed a trade for each team that would work in the NFL draft. And the trade proposal that he had for the Falcons, I'm trying to pull it up here, but it involved Corey Davis.
Okay.
It was the Falcons trading back from number 8 to number 13 with the New York Jets. And the Falcons would also give the Jets a 3rd round pick. And in return, the Falcons receive, in addition to the 13th pick, a 2nd round pick and Corey Davis.
It's an interesting proposal. Davis does have talent. I mean, he would fit in well here in Atlanta. That's an interesting trade proposal. And it's hard to look at trade proposals. You see so many of them that come up in these mock drafts, but call out the picks on that one again. It's the Falcons 8th.
Falcons 8th and a 3rd round pick. I believe it was 3rd round pick this year,
which would be 75.
Yeah, for the 13th pick, the 2023 2nd round pick, which I'm trying to find that where exactly the Jets are picking in the second round. I'll have to find that later. And the wide receiver Corey Davis.
Well, that's interesting because that would give the Falcons 2 picks in the 2nd round. Now you're losing that 3rd round pick, but you're getting 2 quality picks out of that, plus a receiver.
Right.
So that's actually one of the more realistic trade scenarios that I think you could actually see happen. I would not be surprised to see something like that. That would be interesting. I'm calling it up right here, the draft order. The Jets have the 42nd and 43rd pick in the 2nd round. So they have 2 consecutive picks in the 2nd round.
Barnwell proposed it be the 43rd pick.
43rd?
Not that it really matters all that much. They're back-to-backs. But yeah, he suggested the 43rd pick in his. He included that one in his proposal.
Which is why he considers that the Jets would trade it, because they already have that 2nd round pick. So interesting, because it would allow the Jets to, if they were, if they had the urge, they could actually. I've seen quarterbacks float down in these mock drafts to where the Falcons are. And if the Jets want to move on from Zach Wilson, or if the Jets want to pick up one of these quality defenders, that could be a possible scenario. I don't think it's a bad scenario for either team, actually. That's a fairly intelligent trade scenario that Barnwell came up with, but he's a good writer. I mean, he knows his stuff backwards and forwards.
Yeah, I thought it was a good proposal too. I kind of like the idea of, if the best players available at number 8 are offensive tackles, which could very well be the case. Falcons don't really need that. So you trade back 5 spots, and in return, you gain 30 spots on day 2, and you get a wide receiver as well. That's pretty tempting. I know you want to pick in the top 10, and maybe you go off the board. Even if the tackles are the best players, you pick a defensive player at number 8, just stay there and pick a need. But I don't know. I think you could, if you've identified a player as your need that isn't the best available player at number 8, it could maybe still be there at number 13. But even if he isn't, you're gaining value in the 2nd round on day 2, and you're getting a wide receiver.
Yeah, you're getting a guy who does have talent and could be a solid wide receiver on the Falcons under Arthur Smith's passing game. So, yeah, I think I would not criticize that trade, because I still think picking 13th, you can get the player you want and need, and a top player. I think you could still get that top player at that position. So, and the Falcons do have needs at more than one position.
Right.
So if you lose out on one position, you go for another. That's the thing. So I think, I don't see why the Falcons wouldn't trade back a little bit. If not that scenario, another scenario.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, if you can get that kind of value, moving up significantly on day 2 and a player, I really like that idea of trading back if that's the return.
And I think it would be a solid move for the Jets too.
Tony likes the idea of adding Corey Davis, and he points out another point that I wanted to mention as well, that Davis has experience in Arthur Smith's offense, which makes it an even better trade for the Falcons, that he's a guy that had his best season with the Titans when Arthur Smith was their offensive coordinator. So a few years ago, before he joined the Jets. Wallace Smith, though, not a huge fan of that trade proposal. He says, I don't see that happening. He is a fan of Mac Hollins, so he doesn't really think that Corey Davis is needed, Tom.
Okay. It's interesting. We'll see. I think it never hurts, because you're not leaving the first round. You're still going to get a quality player. It's not like you're trading out of the first round. So, I think Matt Hollins could be a good wide receiver fit, but, is going to be a good wide receiver fit. But it never hurts to pick up another quality receiver.
Yeah.
If you really want to give Desmond Ridder a chance to succeed this year, why not bring another weapon in? They're both going to get their chances in the offense. They're not going to suffer for targets in this offense if they're both on this team.
Tony's still saying in his comments, he says, we trade back those 5 spots, we could still draft Paris Johnson from Ohio State, who made the comment he'd move to play left guard to help the team. He was talking to a Falcons reporter when he said that. So that's interesting tidbit that I did not see. Johnson perhaps interested in moving inside to play guard. And Johnson's a guy that could be available at number 13 or even later. I know that, the Steelers are a team, another team that I follow, and they're interested in him, and they're hoping he falls to 17, which probably unlikely, but it's possible that he could fall that far. And if Falcons move back, they could still get Johnson a little bit later.
Well, as I said, it's going to be a very fluid first round this year, because, even everybody seems to be settled on the fact that the Panthers are going to take Bryce Harper at number 1.
Bryce Young,
I'm sorry. Bryce Young at number 1. And I had Bryce Young in my head. I don't know why I said it the other way. It's coming for you, Dave. One of these days. I'm telling you, it sneaks up on you. The Houston Texans at 2. There's a lot of speculation whether they are going to go another season with Davis Mills and actually take take the defensive end at number 2. And now his name escapes me. This is just drives me nuts.
Will Anderson?
Will Anderson. Oh, God. So, Will Anderson, taking him at number 2. So, it's very interesting. And NFL.com, Chad Reuter is usually fairly good on his mock drafts. And this is another thing I've been seeing in mock drafts. Will Levis is moving up the board. And I don't know why. You haven't played a game since, last season ended. And how do you move up the board? It's a month after the combine. You haven't played a game. But in various mock drafts, I have been seeing Will Levis start moving up. And now the thing is, you don't know if that's the case in these NFL draft rooms, because you're going to get a lot of speculation. And as I say, you're going to hear a lot of lies, misinformation. It's practically nothing you hear from an NFL team is going to be the truth this week.
Yeah.
Until they actually go up to the podium with a name.
Mm-hmm.
So don't take any of this too seriously this week. But I have seen a consensus among mock drafts that Will Levis is coming up. So,
well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because it is weird to see a player rise this late in the process, but it happens all the time, especially at quarterback.
Yeah, it does.
Baker Mayfield was not supposed to be the number one pick. And even like the week of the draft, I don't think anyone really thought that was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, I remember going into work that day, and at like 3:00, maybe it happened a little bit before that, but I just remember it happening like 5 hours before the draft. There was chatter that Baker Mayfield could go number one, and then he did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's surprising how that happens. As I say, he has not done anything since the college season ended, except work out at the combine. So, And to me, I take game film over combine results any day. Last year, 2022, I watched some of the quarterback combine day, quarterback day at the combine, and saw Malik Willis throwing dimes all over the field. But the problem is when you're at the combine, you don't have a half ton of defensive linemen staring back at you when you're lining up under center. So that's, that makes a huge difference. And we saw it this year. Malik Willis really struggled when he got the chance to play when Ryan Tannehill was injured. So that's why I don't take much of the combine drills as seriously, because you're not up to game speed and you're not looking at opposing players who are trying to stop you.
Not only that, but also, the quarterback position is so cerebral, and you can sit back and hit all of with no rush, as you're talking about, hit all of the routes and make all the throws, as the scouts like to say. But are you going to be able to read the defense and make the right decision and recognize what the defense is trying to do against you? And that's a big jump from doing that in college versus doing that in the pros. And
right, exactly.
Willis did not. Maybe he will figure it out eventually, but did not do very well at all as a rookie, reading defenses and doing all the things that he did in the combine. And I think that's kind of the concern with maybe Levis a little bit, but definitely Anthony Richardson. So Richardson is a super athletic guy that everyone thinks is the next Lamar Jackson, but can he read a defense? Can he actually understand an NFL offense? And
that's the thing, right? He has the raw talent. But we've seen quarterbacks come out of college with the raw talent and the body that's, you point to him and you say, this guy's an NFL quarterback, and we've seen so many of them come out of college and bust. They don't have, because they don't have that extra intangible that you're looking. And I think Anthony Richardson is another thing. You're counting on his potential. But I've seen so many quarterbacks come out of college where you're counting on the potential and they don't develop. Blaine Gabbert, you would say he was sculpted to be a quarterback. The guy looks like a quarterback. He's got the hands. He's got everything you look for. He just can't hit an open receiver. I once saw Blaine Gabbert throw a ball 5 yards over a receiver's head, completely open, wide open.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous that, and I see Anthony Richardson. I'm not saying Malik Willis or Anthony Richardson or anybody else is going to bust, but you've got to go back to that game tape first, or else. And if you don't see something that inspires you or that makes this player stand out on that game tape, then I don't think you really need to take a chance on him. Funny thing, I saw Pro Football Focus this week. One of their mock drafts had Anthony Richardson going to the Falcons.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting.
I know.
About that. I think that's pretty unlikely, but I guess you never know. You never know. We'll see. Talking Tony has a question for us, sticking with the top of the 23 NFL draft and the uncertainty that that seems to be happening with the beginning of the draft right now, as we head into the final week of prep. Tony asks if we think Houston and Arizona could possibly trade down.
Well, go ahead. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I guess I would say anything's possible, but it has to be. I think if a team is trading up for 2 or 3, it's for a quarterback. It's got to be for a quarterback.
It has to be.
So, right. What team are you identifying as they need that they are enthralled with one of the signal callers and is willing to give up all that you got to give up what Carolina gave up to move up and doesn't have a quarterback already? I think that's kind of a short list of possibilities.
Yes.
Las Vegas, maybe. I guess at the beginning of this mock draft season, teams might, or people might have said Atlanta, but I really don't think Atlanta's that team. So I would cross them off the list. I'm trying to think who else has a top 10 pick. I don't think Detroit is a team that would do that. Seattle's not doing that.
They'll get a backup for Jared Goff a little bit later in the draft.
I think the wild card, and I felt this way since we've started talking about the draft months ago, is the Colts. Could the Colts trade up to number 3? And people months ago ruled out the Colts trading up to number 2 because it's a division rival. Why would you give your division rival a better opportunity to get their future franchise quarterback? Well, this is the Houston Texans that don't seem to really know what they're doing. This could be completely a smokescreen, but in his press conference yesterday, Chris Ballard did not rule out trading with the Texans for the number 2 pick. So I guess that's a possibility. But I don't know if I believe the Colts will be aggressive and do that. I think they're content waiting for their quarterback at number 4.
So do I. I think Ballard's just floating that out there just to see what kind of interest that would draw.
Yeah.
What comments that would get, and to see maybe if he gets a phone call from Nick Caserio and the Texans. So, and again, that goes back to my point. It's all disinformation. All this next week. Could Ballard do it? Yeah, I think they could. The Colts need a quarterback. But I think he's going to sit there and wait for one of the quarterbacks to fall to him. And it seems like C.J. Stroud's stock is dropping as Will Levis is rising. So he might have C.J. Stroud sitting there for him. And that's not going to be a bad that wouldn't be a bad prospect for the Colts. I could see them doing that. So, no, Houston's draft pick is for sale. The problem is you got to find somebody who wants it.
Right.
And is willing to pay the price for it.
Yeah. Because, it probably won't be as much as what Chicago got because that's the very first pick, but it's in that ballpark, and that's a lot to give up. And so it has to be a team that wants a quarterback if you're giving up that much for a draft
pick. A quarterback. And Carolina desperately wanted a quarterback.
Yeah.
And that's how that Bears trade came about. But
it has to be a team that matches Carolina's desperation, but also is willing to accept that we're not getting our first pick unless, I guess, they already know who Carolina's picking, and that's not their first pick.
Right.
I don't know if that's –
so you don't know where these guys rate on their draft board.
Right.
So that's also the interesting thing because you have to figure out where they rate. Where they come in on their draft board and how each team feels about that player. I think Arizona is going to take Will Anderson. I think he's not going to drop farther than 3. I think Arizona is going to stay in place. They are committed to Kyler Murray. They're paying him big money. So you can't take a quarterback now and say, well, it's a quarterback battle between Kyler Murray and whoever we take.
Right.
You can't do that. You're going to take – if you give up on Kyler Murray now, you're taking a huge cap hit that's going to impact your team for the next 3-4 years. He's got a 7-year deal. So Murray, they are committed to at least for the next 3-4 years. And so Arizona, I think, is going to go defense with that first pick, take the edge rusher, Will Anderson.
Pantera says Richardson won't be a bust, but he may not be great either. Anthony can always do the running style, much like Lamar does. And we had another comment about a quarterback, one of the, I would say, I don't want to say bottom 2 quarterbacks, but of the top 4, the second 2, Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. Brian, not a Levis fan. So it's already calling, no matter where he goes, Brian is convinced that Levis is going to be a bust. A couple other comments I want to get to. Tony's team we haven't talked about yet, possibly trading up, the Titans at number 11. Could they move up to number 2 or number 3 for a quarterback? I don't know. I mean, it's possible, but yeah, I know it was only a 3rd round pick. It was a 3rd round pick for Malik Willis last year, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Yes,
that would be so. The Desmond Ridder was a 3rd round pick too.
Yes.
So we've kind of ruled out the Falcons moving up because they're moving forward with Ridder and they at least want to see what he can do. The Titans have Ryan Tannehill, and it wasn't like they picked Malik Willis thinking he was going to be the solution right away. Like, I think they knew Willis is a project. Maybe he's a bigger project than anybody thought he was going to be, but
right.
The expectation was he was going to be a project. Are you giving up on that project already and want to give up all that draft capital to get another quarterback, and that quarterback's not going to be the consensus top guy because you're not picking first? I would say no. I don't see that happening.
Not this season. No, it's not going to happen. Yeah, you've committed a high draft pick to Malik Willis. He came out of Liberty College, Liberty University. It's small, a small conference, and everybody knew, that he was going to be a project because he didn't do a lot of passing. He was a run-first quarterback in college. So it was going to take time for him to catch up with what happens in an NFL offense. So I think they're going to keep trying to move forward with Willis a little bit. And, as the summer goes on, see what happens with his development.
Well, Tom, we have about 10 minutes left. Do you think we can wake up Nostradamus?
Wow. I still think he's in his hibernation mode. I mean, drunken stupor. I mean, hibernation mode. But right. We could try it.
So, all right. Nostradamus, who's going number 1?
Bryce Young.
Okay. I'll ask you first, do the Texans keep the number 2 pick?
I believe they do. However, if they keep the number 2 pick, I think they stay with Davis Mills at quarterback and take Will Anderson. Really?
Okay. I'm not going to – it's too boring if I just keep going down the draft board and tell you who's, have Nostradamus' mock draft. So I'm trying to ask you different questions.
Okay.
Over, under, 3.5 quarterbacks going in the top 5.
Under. Because a couple of those quarterbacks are going to drop farther.
Okay. You're expecting Levis and Richardson to fall?
Yeah, a little bit, yes.
All right, follow-up question. How far will Richardson fall?
Wow. That's a tough one. How far will Richardson?
I'll let you think for a minute. We have a comment from Tony. He does not like Richardson. He only started 1 year in college. That's a red flag, according to Tony. His completion percentage, not very good. Entire completion percentage in college was not very good. So, I think that is a very underrated college statistic for quarterbacks. It's something that's been so inflated in the NFL that completion percentage almost means nothing nowadays. But for a prospect in college, I think completion percentage is pretty important. And Tony is really hit the nail on the head of a concern with Richardson is accuracy.
Accuracy has just never been there. And that's why I say you always have to go back to the tape. Boy, you look. How committed are the Seahawks to Geno Smith?
Oh, you're asking me questions now.
Yeah. Would they take Richardson and kind of say, well, Geno, it really was nice, but yeah, it's, we're gonna go with a younger guy. Now, as I said, I'm with Tony. I don't think Richardson is going to be all that much. And I agree. Pass completion percentage isn't as important as passing completion yards per attempt. That is more important statistic. And that's when you take and that's net completion yards per attempt, because you got to put sacks and lost sack yardage into that equation too. That is the more important statistic when you're in the NFL, is how are you getting the ball downfield? If you're at 8 or 9, you're one of the top quarterbacks in the league, you're probably playing for one of the top teams in the league. So that's a lot of what you want to look for in the NFL. Net completed yards per attempt is the stat you want to look at. Quarterback rating is also important. People kind of take quarterback rating and don't look at it as important.
Now, quarterback rating or passer rating?
Passer rating. I'm sorry, passer rating. I don't read much into the quarterback rating because ESPN has never let it be known how they figure that thing.
Yeah.
And passer rating is important. Not only passer rating, but passer rating differential. What kind of passer rating is your defense surrendering compared to the passer rating your quarterback is generating? That's a very important statistic, and that makes a lot of difference whether you're a winning team or a losing team. That's one of the reasons why I keep wanting to see the Falcons get that edge rusher, because you need a guy who's going to force a quarterback to throw before he makes a complete read. Maybe the quarterback misses the fact that you have a defensive back kind of sitting back there waiting for a throw. Because these guys know where a quarterback's going to go with the ball, and sometimes they'll sit behind the receiver and hide and then make a run on the ball. So that's kind of what you're looking for, is taking that quarterback out of his comfort zone. And the Falcons haven't done that. And that's why I want to see an edge rusher more than anything with the Falcons. But to get back to your question on Richardson, you could go 5. Because as I say, everybody thinks Pete Carroll's a quarterback whisperer. So he could also go to the Raiders. There's a possible chance that the Raiders think they could do something with him. McDaniels thinks I think he's always felt he's bigger than he actually is and better than he actually is. But
yeah.
He's got an inflated opinion of his abilities as a head coach and an offensive coordinator.
Right.
So, it's possible the Raiders take him. I don't think he gets down to 8 or 9, but he'll go in the top 10.
He'll go in the top 10. Okay. Yeah, I don't know about the Seahawks is intriguing. I think if the Seahawks did take him, it's not really a reflection on Geno Smith. I actually think it's a good reflection on Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the Seahawks would be saying, hey, we got 2 first-round picks this year. We're never in the top 10 drafting, where we always have a pretty good team. So this is rare for us. We believe in Geno Smith, and that's why we're willing to take a bit of a project at quarterback, because Smith is going to be our quarterback for 2 or 3 more years, and then Richardson will be the guy after that.
As I say, Pete Carroll has a great reputation of being able to work with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And again, look at Geno Smith, who was a bust, for years before he got to Seattle. Now, Geno Smith faded a little bit in the last part of the season last year, but still had a very solid year as a starting quarterback.
We have some people commenting that Richardson's really going to fall. Wallace says he might fall out of the second round. Brian says he thinks he'll drop below pick 20.
Well, that would be interesting. That's a possibility. As I say, you don't know where these guys truly rate on these draft boards, around the league, 32 teams. There's tons of speculation. Experts are out there giving their opinions, but you don't know. Anthony Richardson is moving up according to social media speculation and writer, press speculation. But is he really that high on boards? You don't know.
Right. And I think that's really an interesting take because of what happened last year. I think the quarterback, everybody said this is a weak quarterback class.
Yeah.
But in mock drafts, that meant, okay, a quarterback's not going in the top 5, but like Kenny Pickett was still like the number 8 guy in mock drafts, and Ritter was still pretty high, and Willis was this wild card that people thought could be the number 1 quarterback taken. None of them were taken.
None of them were taken.
It eventually was in the first round, but it was the only quarterback off the board in the first 2 rounds. Yes. So, maybe Richardson will have a similar thing happen to him where all hype this spring and next week we're going to find out really what teams think about him.
Yeah. It'll be the first honest look we're going to get from how teams evaluate him is whether he drops or not. So it's going to be interesting to see. As I say, the media experts, the media scouts who are, evaluating these players have an opinion, but they don't know. They don't know any more than anybody else does. So yeah, Richardson could fall. That's a perfect comparison, Dave. Is last year, Ritter was supposed to go higher. Ritter wasn't supposed to last to round 3. Based on his combine performance, Willis wasn't supposed to last till round 3.
Yeah.
So
and Pickett was not supposed to be there at 20 either.
No.
Even though he went earlier than the other 2 guys.
Right.
I think the Steelers were shocked, to be honest, that he was there at number 20, and they said thank you very much. Whether or not it becomes a good pick or not, we'll see. But I think they were very thankful that Pickett was there for them.
Exactly. And yeah, he ended up taking the starting job from another quarterback who came out with no real impressive college tape, but impressed in the offseason between college season and the draft, and convinced the Bears to take him at number 2. And we all saw what a disaster that was.
Right.
So, you can't tell. Don't get caught up in anything you hear this week. I would say if you're evaluating Anthony Richardson honestly, yeah, he's going to drop. He should drop.
Yeah.
He's far from being a prospect yet. He has all the skills. He can be a good quarterback, but there's a lot of intangibles you don't know about him. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him drop. I know a lot of experts will be surprised to see him drop. But
the thing about, I'll get to your comment in a second, Brian. The thing about mock drafts though too is a lot of these guys are trying to create hype and there's so many mock drafts now. You're trying to differentiate between all the other mock drafts. So, and everybody loves talking about quarterbacks. Everybody can talk about
even if it's not a strong quarterback class. Right. Everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks.
So one of the ways you get your mock draft discussed, is you have a quarterback go in an unusual spot or higher than he's supposed to. And if everyone is on that train of, okay, I'm going to use this strategy, all of a sudden you've got quarterbacks rising the draft board.
Right.
I think that's how that happens.
Well, turns out it looks like the best rookie quarterback last year was the last player picked in the draft.
That's true.
Brock Purdy.
That's very true. Yeah.
And he wasn't on anybody's radar going into the draft. So you just don't know.
Yeah,
which is part of the fun.
Yep. Yep.
It's part of the fun, speculating on this stuff.
Brian, I agree with you. I think Pickett is a baller. I try to just not be biased towards the Steelers and Steelers players when we talk about them. And I probably end up being like, the reverse bias where I'm harder on them than other players and other teams because I'm consciously trying not to be biased, and I have high expectations for the Steelers.
Yep.
So I need to see more development from Pickett, but I loved what I saw at the end of the season for sure. And you're right. Matt Canada really, really stinks. I'll agree with you on that.
Oh,
yeah. A couple more comments here before we say goodbye. Wallace does not believe that the Seahawks will draft a quarterback after re-signing Geno Smith. I think that's a very fair take to have. I think they're comfortable with Smith, though, in the short term, that it's possible they take a quarterback. But I think, especially with the 2 first-round picks, that's like a high factor with that. And Tony mentioned that Tony says that they could take a defensive player first and then
go quarterback.
Then go quarterback at number 20. Of course, that's assuming that one of the quarterbacks are still there at that point.
Remember, Geno Smith has been around for a while. This is not a second or third year guy who's finally, finding his way in the NFL. Let me look it up here real quick.
He's 32, going to be 30.
Yeah, you even though Geno Smith has played, solid ball for you last year and looks like he's actually got some things figured out in this NFL game, or at least loves Pete Carroll's system, he's still a guy who's actually getting up there in age, surprisingly. And you might want to start looking at that successor to Geno Smith. So, yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities to see the Seahawks take a quarterback at 20. And if Richardson's still there, if he drops, he might end up in Seattle.
Yeah, I think they're at least looking at it. Will they do it? I don't know. But I think they're at least considering it for all the reasons we've already mentioned.
Right.
First-time commenter that I want to get up here on the board, Nuka at ATL, listening to us from up in Canada, Tom, says he loves the Falcons.
Great. It's always good to hear. Always great to have more fans following the show and following the team. Because, that's the thing, Dave and I both have our primary teams that we root for, but we're also Atlanta Falcons fans. We want to see the Falcons really do well. We want to see the Falcons succeed, or else we wouldn't be here. That's the thing. So, yeah, it's great to see, Falcons fans from all over coming on and enjoying the conversation and getting involved. We got a great base of fans, and anybody else wants to comment, I'm all for it. So, yeah, welcome to the show.
We're out of time. I did want to ask you a Bears-related question. If I ask you a Bears-related question, can you answer it in like 30 seconds?
Yeah, sure.
You brought up Chad Reuter. Is that how you say his last name? The NFL.com draft analyst. And in his latest mock draft, he's got Jalen Carter to the Bears at number 9. It's probably unfair for me to only give you 30 seconds to respond to this. But how do you feel about that projection?
It all depends on how, and Carter was in Chicago, and he's talked to Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. So it all depends on what they take from that conversation. I'm not as thrilled about Jalen Carter coming to Chicago. I think the Bears need an edge rusher too. And I think the Bears need an offensive lineman. And I see a lot of mock drafts mocking Skoronski to the Bears. So Carter's talented. Does he have the maturity? I don't know.
Hard for us to answer that question.
Right.
Hard for NFL teams to answer that question. They're trying to figure that out, if he has the maturity or not, and if he's worth the top 10 or top 5 pick it's a hard.
Truthfully, I don't think Carter gets to the Bears.
You think he'll be picked before that?
Yeah.
You think he'll be picked before the Falcons?
Yeah, I think it's a good possibility.
Yeah, I think a lot of the whether I agree with this or not, I don't know. I'll leave my opinion out of this, but I think the controversy that he was involved in is kind of passed, and I think teams are kind of maybe not 100% overlooking it, but probably are more focused on the fact that it's done, it's gone, it's in the past, and what can he do for our football team?
I'm telling you, Drew Rosenhaus has been talking it up big this last week as far as Jalen Carter. So,
yeah,
the fact that you got Drew Rosenhaus in your corner, that makes a big difference too, as far as how he handles the draft. And I'm sorry we don't have time to go into what Rosenhaus had to say last week, but there was some interesting things. Go back and read up on it and how he's going to handle Jalen Carter during the draft.
Right. Yeah, it's just another storyline that I know most of our listener base will be interested in because he's from Georgia, played for the Georgia Bulldogs. So in addition to all of the fallout from the top 7 and then the Falcons pick at number 8, I think people around here are also interested in where Carter lands and all the Georgia Bulldog champions that are in the draft.
Ed Mike had a very interesting first take on the Falcons' first pick last week as far as who he thought they might be. So, you just never know. He had actually had, oh God, let me see. Let me call it up here real quick. I know we're late. Give me a second. Georgia.
Well, I'll mention our sponsor one more time while you look. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. It's a great way to support our show. When you download it, use our promo code ASU. That gets us the support. Yep. It also gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So free money for you, some support for us. Follow us on YouTube. Follow Tom and I on Twitter at TJ Pollen at DM Holcomb. Give us a like on Facebook if you're on there. Lots of different ways to reach us and support us. So we appreciate all of you guys sending in the comments and giving us some love.
Right. Mad Mike is thinking Nolan Smith out of Georgia.
For the Falcons at number 8.
For the Falcons at number 8.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's the one he gave us last week. So that was an interesting pick that he threw out there. So, yeah, as I say, all speculation, but it's fun to talk about.
I think Terry, Terrence Moore, our coworker here on the channel, also has said Nolan Smith. I'd have to go double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I believe he has a video on our channel talking about the Falcons targeting Nolan Smith. So check that out on our channel.
Well, I got to catch up on that because it's been a rough week at work. So I've been very busy, but yeah, I do want to catch up on that and have a lot of respect for Terrence. And it would be interesting because, he's thinking along, as I say, Mad Mike threw that name out last Saturday. And it'll be interesting to see just how that plays out.
Well, thanks for tuning in to today's show, guys. We'll be back next Saturday to recap the beginning of the draft.
Yep. Have a great week, everyone.